I'm not ashamed to own my Lord, nor to defend his cause. Maintain the honors of his word, the glory of his cross.
This evening we are in Daniel chapter 2. Last week we completed the first chapter of Daniel, looking at the captivity that began under Nebuchadnezzar. And this would have been the first wave of captivity of Judah that occurred in three waves. This would have been the first one around 605 BC, when Nebuchadnezzar came to the first time to Jerusalem. And he carried off away some of the nobles, some of the princes, and Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were among those who were taken away. They were to be trained in the Chaldean ways, the language, the culture, so that they could serve Nebuchadnezzar. And so Nebuchadnezzar was importing these people, but he wasn't going to allow them to keep their language. They're going to have to speak a language he could understand. They're going to have to know the culture of the Chaldeans. And they're going to have to know a little bit of the history. And I'm sure they're going to have to know a lot about their gods. Daniel's name was changed from Daniel to Belteshazzar. Daniel, of course, in his name is the name of God. Well, Belteshazzar has the name of the Babylonian god, Bel, in it. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, those are the Babylonian names for Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael, who were Daniel's friends. Daniel was noted in chapter 1 for his faith. They were not treated poorly when taken to Babylon. They could have been thrown in prison, thrown to be slaves. They were being trained to serve Nebuchadnezzar, yes, but they were given some of the choicest foods from the king's table. But included in those foods we discussed last week would have been foods that the Jews were not allowed to eat. And instead of caving to just, let's just go along to get along sort of thing, Daniel said, no, we would prefer you to just feed us water and vegetables, and that would be fine. And the person who was in charge says, I don't think that's going to work. You're going to be scrawny. You're not going to look good, and it will affect me. And Daniel said, give us 10 days. And we will show you that we can survive. And in fact, they look better than those who got fed with the delicacies of the king's table. And so this is where we get the end of chapter 1. Time passes between chapter 1 and chapter 2. So let's read the first 13 verses of Daniel chapter 2. We'll do 3 verses each with Naomi, James, Henry, Bill, and Tammy. 3 verses each, 1 through 13.
In the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar had dreams. His spirit was troubled, and his sleep left him. And the king commanded that the musicians, the enchanters, the sorcerers, the Chaldeans be summoned to tell the king his dreams. So they came in and stood before the king. And the king said to them, I had a dream, and my spirit is troubled to know the dream.
He said to them, I have had a dream.
Verse 4.
Then the astrologers answered the king, May the king live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will interpret it. The king replied to the astrologers, This is what I have firmly decided. If you do not tell me what my dream was, and interpret it, I will have cut into pieces your houses, turned into piles of rubble. But if you tell me the dream and explain it, you will receive from me gifts and rewards and great honor. So tell me the dream and interpret it for me.
They answered the king and said, Let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will give this interpretation. The king answered and said, I know for certain that you will gain time because you see that my decision is full. If you do not make known the dream to me, there's only one decree for you. For you have agreed to speak, lying and corrupt words before me till the time has changed. Therefore tell me the dream, I shall know that you can give me its interpretation.
The king answered and said, I know for certain that you would gain time. Because
Verse 10.
in different versions. 10?
10, yes, please.
The Chaldeans answered the king and said, there is not a man on earth who can tell the king's matter. Therefore, no king, lord, or ruler has ever asked such things of any magician, astrologer, or Chaldean. It is a difficult thing that the king requests, and there is no other who can tell it to the king except the gods, whose dwelling is not with flesh.
You just get 12 and 13.
For this reason, the king was angry and very furious, and gave the command to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. So the decree went out, and they began killing the wise men, and they sought Daniel and his companions to kill them.
All right, so what year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar are we dealing with? Second year. Now, this has, when I've been studying for this, the timeline of Daniel has puzzled a lot of people. Because when you compare it to Second Chronicles and Second Kings and Jeremiah, you're running into dates. This is the second year, this is the third year, this is the first year. And people are coming along and saying, well, a lot of this stuff doesn't seem to line up. Until we realize how we're numbering kings. In the Bible, oftentimes what we would call the first year. So in other words, say Nebuchadnezzar began to reign on X day. We might come along and say, well, that's the first year of the reign of King Nebuchadnezzar. But that's not how the Bible always describes it. If you go back to Daniel chapter 1, and we get, maybe it's 2 Chronicles, chapter 36. Give me a second. Oftentimes we get in the beginning of the reign of this king, and we get that representing the first year of the reign, and then we get, all right, the first year to the second year is represented as the first year, and then the second year to the third year is the second year. You sort of get this idea, and I didn't write the verse down. I should have written the verse down, but I didn't, because I thought it was down on Daniel, but it wasn't. But you see this not only in the kings of Judah, but you also see this in the dates for Daniel. And the reason why this is brought up is because Daniel and his friends were supposed to be trained for 3 years. That's what Daniel chapter 1 said. And yet here we have the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, and we're going to start seeing Daniel again. And so this is, it took me a while to actually sit down and think, yeah, that's exactly what the Bible is telling us, that they number years differently than we do. And you see it during the reigns of Hezekiah. You see it a little bit during the reigns of Josiah, where when you start dealing with the first year, we say, oh, well, we always seem to be out a year. Well, that's because we number differently. And it happens with genealogies too. We come take a look at the Bible genealogies and we say, well, the Bible genealogies are missing names. That's because we do the genealogies different than they did genealogies. They had no problem leaving out some names here and there if it served a purpose. Whereas we like to be very exact. We come along and say, we have to know the year and the month and the day. Well, that's not how the ancients kept time. And so we are in what we might call the third year. It would be during the full third year. The second year, he has been reigning, though, for 2 years. Hence why it's called the second year. Because he has reigned for 2 full years. We are in the third year. The best thing I might be able to describe this as, I'm 38, but I'm in my 39th year, if you understand my meaning. So in other words, if I were to die, usually they write the obituary, you would say in whatever year they are in. You don't usually say they were this many years old. So I'm in my 39th year around the globe, but I am 38 years old. And so if you sort of understand that second year, well, he is into the third year of his reign. So what happened to Nebuchadnezzar? Getting out past the time. What happened to him? He had a dream. What was peculiar about this dream? I'm not asking, I know we know what the dream is, we haven't read about it yet, but what was peculiar about it that we know so far?
Dream is so big, so serious, so troubling. It's different now.
Yeah.
Couldn't sleep.
Couldn't sleep. It was so bad. Couldn't sleep now. It's very interesting about this dream. It was a dream that troubled him so much that he couldn't sleep. Yet there was a reason why he couldn't sleep. Why did it's hard for me to try to explain right now. What was Nebuchadnezzar's problem besides a loss of sleep and his being troubled? There was a reason he was troubled. And it has something to do with what he's asking the astrologers to do. What was that?
He couldn't understand it because it was mysterious.
He not only couldn't understand the dream, I believe he couldn't remember it. He didn't know what it was. Or at least he couldn't remember it in enough detail. Isn't that just the thing? We have vivid dreams sometimes. And we wake up, it was something that we should remember, and then we don't. We get up and say, I'm going to tell someone about my dream, and then you get a couple of minutes, what was my dream again? What was so bad about it? Like as far as this has happened to me, where I have a dream, it seems so real at the time I dreamed it, I was going to tell someone about it, and then I forgot it. I'm like, I can't remember what it was. I knew it was important, but I can't remember what it was. And Nebuchadnezzar had that problem. He couldn't remember it. And so he asked the impossible of these astrologers. What was his ask? Tell me what the dream is and interpret it. These astrologers here, what we might call psychics or magicians, were very good at interpreting dreams. And I'm not saying that they accurately interpret dreams, but they were good. If someone sits down, tell me your dream. And then person would tell them the dream. And they could come up with an interpretation of that dream. Because, realistically speaking, dreams are usually quite broad. And you can make a guess here. Oh, that represents this, or that represents that. And it's exactly what psychics do today. Psychics don't sit there and speak in specifics. Psychics, they want you to go tell you a little bit so they can feed off of that information or this information and can make a general prediction. And then when it comes to pass, well, see how good I was? See how great of a psychic I am? When really telling you that it will rain in the next week is not really a prediction. Chances are it will rain in the next week. Or, like as far as these are just some vagaries here. And so Nebuchadnezzar wanted more. He wanted to know, okay, can these people really can they really interpret my dream? I'll tell you how I'll get them to. They can tell me the dream too. And if they can tell me the dream, then I can know that they can interpret it. Because I haven't told them the dream. Did you have something before we moved on, Bill?
No, I just was thinking that he was king.
Yeah.
The thought of what bothered them, they're all idolaters.
Yeah.
So their dreams certainly be different than ours.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that maybe puzzled him.
Yeah.
And that's why he goes to the soothsayers.
Yeah. Like as far as he really wants to know what this dream is, and so that's why he goes and people at that time and even people today believe that their dreams have meanings. Why did I dream this? Psychology has dream interpreters. Well, when you dream this, it represents that. Really, realistically speaking, those are just guesses. It's exactly what is going on here with these astrologers. They couldn't do what they claimed to do, which is why they couldn't interpret the dreams. Now, Nebuchadnezzar gave some incentives for being able to do what he is asking. He gave an incentive and he gave him a disincentive. What were they?
Give them money, give them gifts.
Yeah, you can do it. I'll give you honor. I'll give you gifts. That would be great. If you can't do it, I'm going to cut you into pieces. I'm going to tear your houses down. I'm going to kill you. What a guy Nebuchadnezzar is. He's asking what these magicians say is the impossible. And he says, if you can't do it, I'm going to kill you. Now, why would he go that far? Besides the fact that he's ruthless. Why does he go that far?
Basically saying that they are useless. If they can't do it, they will be useless. And over the years, they would be given non-interpretation.
Yeah. He had hired them to be interpreters, magicians, soothsayers, fortune tellers. And he had probably paid them quite well. And yet, if they really can do what they say they can do this. But if they can't do what they say they're going to do, they've been lying to him all the way along. And so, what good are you? Why am I paying you? Why are you living if you're lying to the king? Nebuchadnezzar wasn't accepting of people lying to him. And so he said, no, I'm going to cut you up into pieces. I'm going to burn your houses down. I'm going to kill your, did he say you're going to kill your family? But even if he didn't, like I said, this is Nebuchadnezzar. And the astrologers, they tried to play for time. And Nebuchadnezzar, stop that. You're not going to try trick me into telling you what my dream is. You're not going to trick me. So stop delaying. Do it now. And the people couldn't do it. They just couldn't do it. And so the rule went out, all right, off with your heads. And that went out. And so the king's people went out, and they started killing all the wise men, and Daniel and his friends were being sought to be killed because they were among those people. They were among the wise men that had been trained. And so he wanted them all gone. And that's where we'll pick up the story. Verses 14 to 23, we'll do 3 verses each. We'll go to Tammy and then up to Naomi and around.
2 each?
3.
Then with counsel and wisdom, Daniel answered Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, who had gone out to kill the wise men of Babylon. He answered and said to Arioch, the king's captain, why is the decree from the king so urgent? And Arioch made the decision known to Daniel. So Daniel went in and asked the king to give him time, that he might tell the king the interpretation.
And Daniel went to his house and made the matter known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions. I told him to seek mercy from the God of heaven concerning this mystery, so that Daniel and his companions may not be destroyed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. A mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision of the night. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven.
Daniel answered and said, Blessed be the name of God forever and ever. For wisdom and might are his, and he changeth the times and the seasons. He removeth kings and setteth up kings. He giveth wisdom unto the wise, and knowledge to them that know understanding. He revealeth the deep and secret things. He knoweth what is in the darkness, and the light dwelleth with him.
I thank you and praise you, O God of my fathers. You have given me wisdom of might, and have now made known to me what we ask of you. For you have made known to us the king's demand.
All right. So we have here Arioch, who is the captain of the guard. He's going around fulfilling the king's command. He finds Daniel. What's Daniel's response to Arioch? Give him some time. He wants some time. But he asks Arioch a question. Not only does he want some time, but he wants to know something else in verse 20 to 15. What's the big deal? What's going on? He doesn't know. He doesn't know what Nebuchadnezzar has just asked for my head. What did I do? Why is this so urgent? What did I do to displease Nebuchadnezzar? And Arioch had to explain what was going on. And so Daniel went in and asked for time. Now, Daniel, the other Chaldean magicians, they were trying to stall for time, and Nebuchadnezzar wouldn't have it. But evidently here, Daniel wasn't standing before Nebuchadnezzar. So Arioch obviously gave him time. And so, where did Daniel go? And who did he talk to? All right, so he went home, talked to his friends. But what was their discussion about? In verse 17. Went to his house, made the decision, known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah.
Going back to 16.
Yeah.
Okay, but it says he went in and asked the king to give him time.
Oh, maybe I misread
He didn't
that.
ask the wrong area.
Okay, maybe I misread that. You're right. Thank you for correcting me. Well, all right, but he did. All right, he's asked for the king, and the king must have granted him time. I misread that. Happens when you have a headache.
The king probably did that. I think because Daniel went in and asked. Like, personally.
He must have asked him in a way different to the astrologers.
Yeah.
The astrologers were rather indignant. And sort of must have rubbed Nebuchadnezzar the wrong way. There's probably more to what Daniel said than is written here. And so Daniel probably talked to Nebuchadnezzar in a way that convinced Nebuchadnezzar to grant him time.
But yeah, they were saying, well, tell us the dream and we'll tell you the interpretation.
Yeah.
Daniel just asked for time. He didn't go in and say, oh, what was the dream?
Yeah.
Well, I can do it.
Yeah. He didn't do that.
Yeah,
and I'll bet you we'll get a hint as to what he told Nebuchadnezzar based on what he talks with his three companions. Getting back to that part now, who are they going to depend on to tell the dream? James.
You're going to depend on God.
They're going to depend on God. And so he made the decision known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah's companions that they may seek mercies from the God of heaven concerning this secret. Daniel didn't pretend when he went before Nebuchadnezzar to know what the dream was or to know its interpretation. He didn't even try to fake it. He was going to depend on God. And he most likely, now that we know who talked to Nebuchadnezzar himself, told Nebuchadnezzar that. Give me time. I'm going to go pray to my God, and I will come back. Yeah, James.
Daniel didn't go as if he is the one.
Yeah.
Interpreting the dream.
Yeah. And we're going to see that later on in the chapter when he actually does go tell the dream and its interpretation to Nebuchadnezzar. We are going to find who Daniel is going to depend on. He's going to make it known it's not me who is doing this. But Daniel again shows his faith. And perhaps these 3 years that Daniel has been with Nebuchadnezzar, at least in his among his wise men, Daniel has had other opportunities to show his faith to Nebuchadnezzar, to be able to gain the trust of Nebuchadnezzar here. And so we have Daniel placing his faith in God, that God was going to protect him, because he knew, if I don't tell this man his dream and the interpretation, we're going to die. That was the decree, and Nebuchadnezzar didn't seem to back down from that. He granted Daniel some time, yes, but he didn't pull back the decree and say, well, I just won't kill you even if you don't do it. He was going to trust that God would protect them, that they weren't going to perish. They had to place their faith in God for that because they didn't know the dream. They didn't know its interpretation. How did Daniel find out the secret?
God revealed
In what?
the night vision.
In a night vision. He revealed to him in a night vision the secret of not only Nebuchadnezzar's dream, but obviously its interpretation as well. Bill?
I just thought even if we don't know what he said to Nebuchadnezzar, we see his character.
Oh, yeah.
And then after he goes to God, then he told Nebuchadnezzar then
Yes.
where that came from.
Oh, yes. Oh, absolutely. We absolutely know Daniel's going to take no credit for this.
Yeah.
Daniel's going to not take, you're not even going to take an ounce of credit for it. Not one smidgen of it. But, considering, he had to have said something that's not written here, in order, because Nebuchadnezzar was just ready to kill everyone else. And so Daniel must have said something. And we don't know what it is. And it's really, well, there's no use just getting bogged down in what could he have said.
Yeah.
Nebuchadnezzar gave him time, and Daniel was going to prove his character as to who was going to reveal the dream, and it was God. Do you have something, James, before we move on?
But we see situations like that, when God is intervening, God having this purpose. And he was humble, Daniel was a humble person. And he went in because God was protecting him.
Mm-hmm.
But, this event is happening for all this dream that Nebuchadnezzar had was happening so that God could be proven to be God.
Yeah, we're getting to that part, yeah.
And with the other wise men, right?
Yeah.
The magicians, they were non-believers in God, right?
Yeah.
And Daniel was a believer. God is carrying him through, to do the job that he wanted him to do.
Yeah.
So God was protecting him.
Yeah, we see God's hand throughout this book. It is very obvious once we see the dream, which we're not going to get to tonight. Once we see the dream, we're going to know God sent the dream. And God sent the dream not only to show Nebuchadnezzar that God's in control, but he's going to give Daniel an opportunity to declare God's glory to Nebuchadnezzar, because I really do believe God's the reason Nebuchadnezzar couldn't remember the dream either. Because if he could remember the dream, and it really didn't scare him, then he probably would have just sought his astrologers and accepted what their response was. But God sent the dream, and Daniel was going to declare God's glory by being able to not only tell the dream, but interpret it as well. There's going to be no mistake when Nebuchadnezzar hears the interpretation. He's going to say, that's it. That is it, because not only did you tell me the dream, you told me what it means. The meaning makes sense. There could only be one way. And Daniel says, yeah, that's God. It's not me. It's not me. Before we run out of time, how does Daniel describe the power of God here? How did he describe the power of God in verses 20 to 23? So, there are ways he described it.
I wondered if God had a twofold purpose in this dream. Because, like you're saying, Daniel and his three companions, they're young guys. And what I just caught on here, the way Daniel described the way his prayer went, it's almost like he's learned something here himself.
Yes.
You know, like he truly, through God's vision, Daniel knows now God controls.
Yeah, we don't know if Daniel had ever had a vision before.
No.
And probably at this young age, maybe not. Maybe this is the first time Daniel has had a vision like this from God. He's had faith in God all along. He's trusted in God all along. But there's sometimes seeing is believing sometimes. And Daniel now had a fuller understanding of just what's going on here. You may have, it's sort of like Joseph. Joseph, when he was in Egypt, and he was in Potiphar's house, and then he was in prison, and then he was raised up into Pharaoh's house, he never seemed to give up his faith in God. He always seemed to be that man of faith, but later on, when his brothers come, then he gains a full understanding. Now I know why I'm here. It's to make sure that my people don't go extinct, basically. God has sent me here to protect you through that famine. Joseph knew that later. Well, Daniel had faith in God, but Daniel, perhaps by his prayer here, yes, is now understanding not only about God's existence, but about what he is going to proclaim about God. Why is Daniel there? Well, Nebuchadnezzar needed to know about God too. Because Nebuchadnezzar played a big role in God's plan. He's going to be at the very head of this dream that he has. But how is God described by Daniel?
Shown that God has all wisdom, all knowledge. God controls the times of the season. He's the one that put things there and place things, remove and place things.
Yeah.
You know, he's showing Daniel, Nebuchadnezzar that, you know, God is in control of everything, including him.
Yeah. Yeah, that's absolutely right. God is all powerful. He is all wise. He is in control. That's a theme we're going to see in Daniel. That God is in control. Not only in the first narrative section, but in prophecy as well. God is in control. We're going to find when Nebuchadnezzar gets too high on his horse and starts thinking of himself more highly. Look at the things that I have done. Daniel comes in and says, you're going to be eating grass like the cows of the field until you know that God rules in the affairs of men and raises up kings as he sees fit. Nebuchadnezzar was raised up for a purpose, and that was to execute God's judgment on Judah. But God's purpose didn't end with Nebuchadnezzar. There's going to be 3 other kings come after Nebuchadnezzar that is going to end with the Messiah coming to be the ultimate king in the days of that 4th kingdom. And so God is in control, and Daniel is seeing that. Once Daniel knew what the interpretation was, it really must have been awe-inspiring to him. Wow, God's not just telling Nebuchadnezzar something about himself. He's telling him things about kings that have not yet been born yet. And then he's talking about this Messiah that's going to come and set up a kingdom forever. That's got to be pretty awe-inspiring for Daniel. And so he gives God the glory for who God is. He now sees God as not just this aloof figure that looks down, really doesn't get involved. And Daniel now can see the hand of God everywhere. And today, we don't always see God's purpose. Don't know always what God's purpose is. But let's not start thinking that God doesn't care and that God is not involved. Just because we don't have a book of the Bible to say, okay, yes, I now know why God did this, or I now know why that event happened. We always have to speak in perhaps God did this, or perhaps this is why this happened. Daniel, with this dream, he knew. He knew why this happened. And it's going to be, when he stands before the king, he's not only going to be able to tell the king his dream, but he's going to tell them the interpretation that would set the stage for the next 600 years of history when it comes to the fulfillment and the sending of the Savior, Jesus Christ. With that, we will take up with Daniel 2:24, and we'll probably finish the book. Finish the chapter next week. Yeah, we'll finish the book. We're really going to go. We're really going to push through it. We'll finish the chapter maybe next week, but I do want you to think about, okay, we tell the kids the story about the statue, but I'd like us to think about that final piece of the dream. The stone coming and chopping it down, what that means. Why is that important that we understand that part? Because that's actually the most important part of the dream. It's not the head of gold, or the shoulders of silver, or the waist of bronze, or even the feet of iron and miry clay. Those are interesting, but that's not the most important part of the dream.
I'm not ashamed to own my Lord, nor to